Great. Appreciate folks joining. We're going to be taking a look back at vintage Los Angeles going back ways years ago. I moved out to LA in 1976, and a lot of the pictures that we're going to be looking at are before then. And the way I got them was not intentionally going off to look for early pictures of LA, but I would be looking for pictures of Disneyland or other theme parks, and people naturally would have gone to other places when they were visiting Disneyland or whatever. So over time, I just started collecting and realizing I had more and more and more. For the folks that live out here, you realize almost everything in LA, as soon as we're tired of it, we knock it down. So a lot of the old buildings like Jim Brown has the picture of the Brown Derby behind him, stuff like that. Tear it down, knock it to the ground. And Carol and I often talk when we go to England, places like that, how they appreciate their culture, and LA knocks it all down to the ground. So we're going to be jumping. It's all over the place in different years and places and that sort of thing. But let me share the screen. I'll start here. Okay, share screen. Okay, let's see, well, let me just change pictures here 1 second when I get this started. 1 second. So the first thing I'm going to do is take a look at some souvenir pictures because they just came alphabetically in my folder here. But folks would come out to LA and they would take their own pictures and they would buy all sorts of souvenir pictures. These are Panaview souvenir slides. And again, a lot of these areas have changed so much. If you go to Farmers Market today, it's still there, but a giant change from what it was. It now has a mega shopping area next to it named the Grove. And a lot of the charm of the original Farmers Market was destroyed as the area was expanded to make way for the Grove. Parts of it are still there, but we can still live with it back in these old vintage pictures. You don't have as much of this sort of thing anymore where they had lots of produce and everything. The real estate's just become too valuable to make money on selling watermelons or, other fruit, that sort of things. So lots of the shops and stuff are gone, but it was fun back in these pictures were all taken in the 70s. And again, big produce, you could get gourds and lettuce and all sorts of things out there. Outdoor seating in that area. Again, some of this is left. Most of it has unfortunately been modernized in the name of progress. I always got a kick out of this shot, thing of selling baskets, and the name of the shop was the Coral Reef. My bet is somebody bought a shop and didn't bother changing the name on it. Those are some souvenir slides from Farmers Market. We can jump over to some souvenir slides of Hollywood. This particular set came back from the 1960s, and these gals are out there looking at the footprints and handprints out that I don't know at this point in time, this was probably still Grauman's Chinese Theater, and then it became Mann's Chinese Theater, and it's been renamed. But you can see Van Johnson in the front, James Mason in the back. And it's kind of interesting to see how deep some of these things go, the way the shadows are. Today, I imagine you have to worry about anything that deep, somebody would trip on it and sue you, but you can still go out there and I don't know where they put all the concrete blocks after they run out of space and some of them get worn out, but still in the courtyard, it's still a big touristy thing to come out and see. And then very well dressed lady out here pointing out the star Charlton Heston out on the Walk of Fame. For folks that aren't familiar with it, the Walk of Fame is run by the Chamber of Commerce, and they will happily put a star out there if you pay for it, or if your friends pay for it. The Chamber does not pay for it. So there's a lot of people, you say, why don't they have a star? It's because they didn't feel like raising the money, or they didn't have a fan club to do it. But there's a fee to have a star put out there. They do a big ceremony where they would you take out one of the existing concrete or whatever the terrazzo marble things are, put in another one, and then you can come and unveil it. And there's different symbols in the star. As you can see in Charlton's, there is a round symbol in there. There's one for being on television, one being on radio, one being in the movies, that sort of thing. And a few people have multiple stars. So if you go down the street, you might see their name a couple times. When you do get a or the one thing the Academy will give you is not the Academy, the Chamber of Commerce will give you is a small replica of the star that you can take home and, show. One of the things I should have brought it out, I don't have it handy, is that years ago, Carol, very nice for my birthday, had a Hollywood Walk of Star made for me by the same company that makes the real ones, makes the miniatures for all the actors and actresses. So I'm really thrilled to have my own Hollywood Walk of Fame star, and it may not be on the Walk of Hollywood, but I have a star. So I thank her again for doing that. And then here's again a close-up of one of them, Frank Sinatra, getting the award for being in the movies. Interesting side note, folks that are Disney fans may remember that Annette Funicello years ago had an unfortunate situation where her house burned down and she lost almost everything she owned, and including the little star for her Walk of Fame. And we were able to go to the Chamber of Commerce and said, could we get a replacement for it? Normally they charge for it. And they said, no, she went through so much, we'll just give her one. She means so much to people. So it's nice that they went through for that. Another souvenir slide, if you were out here in LA, you could come to a taping of the Lawrence Welk show, which thank God my parents were never giant fans of the Lawrence Welk show. But sometimes we would go and visit other folks, and they were, and the shows always seemed very much the same to me. But we keep another Disney connection over on the left. You can see Bobby Burgess, one of the original Musketeers, dancing with his partner in this picture of it. Other of the panel view slides will go and they'll show you scenes from Bonanza and other things where you could not go and attend a taping or a filming of it, but they were things that you could get from Hollywood. But this was a thing that you could get tickets and you could come and see the Lawrence Welk show taped, and take this home as a memory, as a souvenir of it. We move on from there into New Chinatown. And New Chinatown it's still an interesting spot. It's very much like it has looked in these pictures. Not a lot of changes from it. But you had the original Chinatown, which was greatly demolished for things like Union Station and other parts of LA to be modernized, put courthouses and things in. So most of the original Chinatown from the old days was raised in the things of public progress. Back in the 50s, I believe it was, they decided that they should retain part of Chinatown, and they rebuilt, basically this was all pretty much new in the 50s, and why they call it New Chinatown. Of course, now 50, 60 years later, it's taken on a certain different charm. But it's a fun spot to go down to, lots of different shops, restaurants. There was a Chinese restaurant used in one of the Jackie Chan movies that my son just got a real kick out of going and eating all the time when we go down that way. So this area would look very familiar today, usually a lot more crowded than was in these particular pictures. And if you go down and try to map the images, a lot of the same shops, or at least the same signage is over, probably different people running it, or merchandise may be different. But it's still a fun spot to go and visit downtown. I don't, we haven't been down there tonight. Tell you what, let me just go back here for 1 second and mute folks. Okay, let me mute all. Okay, hopefully I didn't mute myself. Okay, let me close that back. We haven't been down there at night in a long time. I don't know if the neon still works or not. The Chinese Dragon, and I haven't seen any performances. As you can imagine, a lot of these things are staged for the photographers. But again, if you go down and match the images, they're very easy to line up today. Another set of souvenir slides from the folks here is, this one's called LA Tours. And we're now looking at the Bonaventure Hotel. This was real monumental hotel when it opened in the 70s in LA. Tallest structure around. For years, the tallest structure had been LA City Hall, which for many of us, if you don't know LA, you might know it as the Daily Planet building. But they built the Bonaventure, and it was a very modern hotel and very popular. It had a very popular tourist or bar lounge upstairs and a revolving restaurant and everything. Back at that time, you would go up there and you could see pretty much all of LA. Now the Bonaventure has been uh, pretty much surrounded by other high rises and doesn't have the vistas that it used to have, and therefore not the cachet that it did. But it was a very eye-opening hotel when it opened in the 70s. You can see here somebody's up on a balcony looking down, and they had all these little nooks and crannies built up in the lobbies where there were just couches. You could sit, read a book, and a giant, giant open air atrium for the lobby of the hotel. View of downtown LA. Again, the skyscrapers starting to go up, and this has changed tremendously. I saw a picture recently somebody did of the view of the LA in 1960 and the LA of 2020, and the difference in 60 years is just absolutely astonishing. You can go over to Alvera Street, which looks very much like it did back in the days this was taken, and it's been a big tourist draw since the 30s. Lots of stalls, Mexican restaurants, and just places to shop. Right near Union Station, and if you're a big train fan, you can go over there and enjoy the ambience of a wonderfully restored 1930s vintage train station, which is still, unlike a lot of other vintage train stations, actually used for trains. It's a giant hub of our subway and train system out here. And another slide reused. It was in Chinatown, but it's also in the LA tour, Chinese Dragon. This is over at Little Tokyo, which is another interesting spot to visit. There's LA City Hall, the Daily Planet building in the background. And this was a monument outside the Little Tokyo. They since added a very nice tribute to the people lost in the space shuttle mission there. One of the Japanese American astronauts was lost there. A tour of LA would not be complete without a visit to Universal Studios. So since they already had this negative on hand, just put a different frame on it and throw it into a different slide set. And you could do the same thing by taking another picture of Farmer's Market and throw that into the set. The Beverly Hills Hotel with its famous palm trees and staying at the intersection of Sunset and Beverly. We're up at the Yamashiro restaurant up in the top of LA, or top of Hollywood, looking down out over LA. We had seen this about a year ago, the Bernheimer Museum and stuff I mentioned, and how the family ended up building the restaurant up there. Became Yamashiro Restaurant. Just down below the hill from here is the famous Magic Castle Club for magicians. And I imagine this will be very popular this weekend with the temperatures being in the hundreds. Picture of the beach out at Santa Monica. Century City, the two skyscrapers that went up. This was on the former site of the 20th century back lot when the studio got themselves into a world of financial hurt by doing a bunch of bomb films, including the infamous Cleopatra. They sold off the back lot and they put in Century City, which became a very popular spot for office complex. It also used to have a very nice live theater there, other odds and ends. And it's unfortunate to think about all the great movies that were shot here, how this all could have been a wonderful tour, but unfortunately it is gone today. And the sun sets on lovely Santa Monica, being up on the overlook there. We're going to see a lot more vintage Santa Monica. This would look pretty much the same today. In the hotel in Century City, don't think this has changed much. Became very popular when presidents would come to town, that sort of thing, because it has pretty good proximity to Los Angeles International Airport, and also very close to where all the fundraisers are held in Beverly Hills, places like that. So those are, I think, enough souvenir slides to hold us over. We're going to take a look at random things that tourists got when they were out here visiting LA. So we're going to jump now to September of 1965. And this is an area over in Griffith Park. If you're a railroad enthusiast, that I know a number of folks are, you really want to come and check out Travel Town. It's a free museum run by the city of LA, and they have a tremendous collection of antique trains that are out there, and also some other things, some trolleys, some vintage fire engines, things like that. But Travel Town, a lot of these trains were taken here under power, parked, and unfortunately have not run. Some of them have, as you can imagine, 50, 60 years of people climbing on them, they get worn out. But they get used a lot in movies these days, where if you want to have a scene of somebody at a vintage train station, they can go and put somebody in a car, and when the train pulls out, well, the train isn't pulling out, it's the camera dolly going down the platform. But it gets used in a lot of Hollywood movies, and they'll come and put smoke generators in an engine and have somebody waving, and blue screen or green screen, and other odds and ends. They used to have an area over here with airplanes. They took these out, and these planes, like the one in the front, a P-40 Warhawk, just absolute fortunate these things were worth. And they only had this small chain link fence around it, so people would go in and steal all the instruments out and stuff like that. So the museum decided that their emphasis would be on steam trains and not on airplanes, and they were able to sell off and trade off a number of the airplanes. But they used to have quite a few of them sitting out there, and some of these, multi-million-dollar aircraft today in the 1960s, they were used for kids' playgrounds, things like that. If you came out to Universal, one of the big draws was that you got to have lunch I guess pretty much lunch. I think they were closed at dinner time in the Universal commissary. So you could walk right in. They had this giant montage of photos on the back of stars and some of their current TV shows. But that was part of the tour. It's hard to imagine today when you see how many people go to the Universal tour. But you could walk in, and maybe you're lucky enough the next table that Charlton Heston would be having lunch over there, or Brock Hudson or something. But you got a table right there with the stars. And so here's a view somebody got of their visit there, enjoying their lunch, hobnobbing. Very dark picture, but you can imagine no flash allowed. Hollywood Bowl is a great spot. If you are out here visiting LA and you're not able to go to the Hollywood Bowl for a concert, they do have admission that you can come in and visit the bowl and just wander around. If you are familiar with the bowl and you go there today, you'll know this area has changed, because the whole fountain area that's down there in the front has been changed to very expensive box seats that have been put into place. They've also, over the years, changed the background, the shell itself, numerous times to try to continually improve the acoustics that the venue offers. But if you go out there, you can see in this particular shot, there's a lot of music stands set up out there. Sundays, if you're lucky to go for a visit and just go in, you'll find the orchestras out there practicing, getting ready for their performances. So if you're not able to make a nighttime performance, it really is a fun spot to just kind of walk through. You can also see all the little boxes in this particular area. Very trendy to go and bring in your own dinner, and people will come in and sit down with china sets, crystal, silver teapots and everything, and have a dinner. Or you can sit up behind there in the bleacher section and bring in your picnic basket and have your submarine sandwich or whatever. You don't need to go all out. But the Hollywood Bowl is a great spot to visit. Here we are at the corner of Hollywood and Vine. American Airlines had a very prominent travel office there. It's funny to think back about in the 60s, 70s, and probably 80s, the airlines still had all sorts of satellite offices around that you could go and book tickets. And we used to have one up here in Van Nuys. At Van Nuys, we have what's called the Flyaway Bus Terminal, and they used to have all the airlines had booths up there that you could walk in and get it, because there was no internet, and trying to do everything over the telephone sometimes was a royal pain in the butt if you had a real complicated itinerary. So you could go out there and book these things in person. In the front is a RTD bus. That was the Rapid Transit District, which if you ever rode a bus in LA, you know they were not rapid. Now they're called the MTA, the Metropolitan Transit Authority, because I think they've given up any pretense that they're rapid. But sometimes people get a real kick out of old vintage buses, and big ad on the side for Cutty Sark. And again, more of the view, the buses moved out of the way, and there's American. If you go out there today, a lot of these buildings you can imagine are gone or totally changed. If you look up the street and try to find the mortuary and that, these things are gone. But you can see some of the stars out there for the Hollywood Walk of Fame stretching off into the distance. Over at the theater, I don't remember which theater this was. My Fair Lady playing. A lot of these theaters have now changed names or been subdivided, or some of them unfortunately gone with us. But big road show going on here for My Fair Lady. Out at Grauman's Mann's Chinese, I guess I had Grauman's at the time. Grauman's Chinese Theater, all sorts of people taking pictures of the sidewalk and enjoying the footprints out there. You can see down below the big thing, refrigeration, air conditioning. Again, a lot of the theaters are not air conditioned in early years, and this one was, and you would come out here, and if you didn't want to do anything else, just enjoy our air conditioning. And fans of Disney World would recognize this as the facade used later for the Great Movie Ride. It was sadly gone at Disney World today. But this was also the facade used for the Hollywood Pavilion at the 1964-65 New York World's Fair. Then whoever took these pictures was very thrilled to see Houses of the Stars, taking one of their bus tours through. They were not thrilled enough, however, to write down who the particular stars' houses were. So if any of you happen to look at it and say, oh, I happen to recognize that was Robert Young's house, or Diana Shore's house, or hey, that was Don Lancaster's house, please let me know, and I will be happy to put in a name to these houses. So I have posted these online before, and nobody has ever shown who they are, but there's somebody that live in a different lifestyle, are better off than I do. And actually, it's funny, my house, and Carol will get a kick out of this, our house does show up in a TV show. People came by and took pictures of it. They were doing a TV show, and I think it was called My Town, and Doris Roberts was in this film. I think it was a Hallmark show. And I wasn't home, but Carol was home, and there was a knock at the door, and Doris Roberts was there and said, we're filming outside. It's taking longer than we anticipated. Would you mind terribly if I use your bathroom? So Carol let her come in and use the bathroom. And for years, we were talking about putting a little brass plaque on the seat, the Doris Roberts toilet. But you can go in and see pictures of it. And we have had people drive by that are movie aficionados trying to figure out what's been shot in the park outside our house and stuff. But again, if anybody recognizes any of these, let me know. Sadly, the Doris Roberts toilet seat did wear out and was since replaced, and we have lost our tie to Hollywood history. The Century Square Shopping Center, again, part of where 20th Century Fox used to be. This area has changed tremendously in recent years. It built up into a much, much larger shopping center. But when this thing was built, this was real cutting edge technology at the time, and very, very modern, stark architecture with very clean cut lines. It has since lost its real sense of identity from my point of view. It's, again, a very popular shopping center, but it doesn't have the same sort of ambience or feel that it did back then. Mail call. Carol's getting the door, and hopefully the dogs will stop. So one moment, please. Okay, we're at Forest Lawn Cemetery. Forest Lawn, butt of many jokes over the years on the Johnny Carson show on that. But they do have many famous and, of course, many non-famous people up there. And you could go up there. They have displays of different things. Here, this sign is telling us, I think we can zoom in on it a bit, that if you're worried about Forest Lawn being expensive, it's not, because every day 20 families come by here and get buried. So wouldn't it be nice to compare values before you decide? So kind of an interesting thing to me that it's obviously a cemetery, operated also as a tourist attraction, but when you get out there, there's a sign out there, and the fact that they have 16,000 services every year helps make it a real place to go. So they've not yet sold me on it because I am not yet ready to go. More views of Forest Lawn. And there's actually two forest lawns, and sometimes people show up with a smaller one and they're very disappointed they don't see all this, but the one over in Glendale is different. This was the air that you would get in the 1960s in beautiful LA. When I first got out here, this was what we had. Matter of fact, this was a good day for when I first got out here in '76. And we had stage 1, 2, and 3 smog alerts. And when you would drive into the Disney studios, there was a big sign telling you that today was a stage 1, tomorrow was a stage 3, and warning you about not taking outdoor activities. They would take kids off all the schoolyards. Carol can talk more about it when we do chat, that she grew up on it. But you would go out and spend some days outdoors, and you would think you had just taken in a pack of cigarettes. So today, with catalytic converters and all the other improvements, a day like this is very, very rare out here. But back in the '60s and '70s, this was absolutely commonplace. We've hopped over to the Disneyland Hotel. It's interesting, of all the things on this roll of film that the person took, in this particular one, they got a shot of some of the shops at the Disneyland Hotel. KEZY was a radio station. If you were watching the behind the scenes attraction on Disney Plus, they talk about it. You could actually go down and stand at the windows in there and watch the disc jockey at work, and they would wave to you. And they had a real live radio station that broadcast 24 hours a day. And all sorts of other shops, fashion shops and camera stores and everything. Disney took these shops over in the 1970s. And excuse me, my wife seems to lock my son out. I just have to get the door. 1 second. I know. I think Mom locked it accidentally. Sorry. So Disney took these shops over in the 1970s and kind of more homogenized them, and you lost some of the unique stuff. But it is interesting. So a friend of mine is a big historian on the Disneyland Hotel, and he was just thrilled to get a view that he didn't have. And just driving down the street, another view of Mann's or Grauman's Chinese Theater. It was Mann's Chinese Theater when I got out here, so I keep saying Mann's, but it was Grauman, Sid Grauman, who was the fellow that built it. And in this particular time it was being done, you had Von Ryan's Express, and that's a good way sometimes when you get a box of pictures and you don't know how to date them, and you do have some to capture the view here. It's you can go and date it. Up at the Yamashiro restaurant, if you do come to LA, it is a very nice restaurant way up at the top of the hill there, and does offer a very nice dining experience. Hard to believe again that this was a guy's private home at one point in time. Somebody had some immense amounts of money. And looking down at LA, or again Hollywood, the view hasn't changed much. Thank God the smog has, and you can actually see the area beyond there today. So we're going to leave 1965 and smog, and we're going to jump back even further to 1952. And this is kind of interesting. LA has changed tremendously since 1952. This is along near the Palos Verdes area. You can see there's an oil well in the background and people doing cattle ranching. And I mean, the area has just changed tremendously. This is all built over now. We're going to see an awful lot of oil wells, and almost all of them are gone. But if you look at the oil well where my mouse is moving around here, it's a smaller one. The tower is basically built when you're drilling it. And then when you get the oil, done, you put this small thing in here, and a small engine basically moves a pump up and down. Surprisingly, although LA is not a giant oil producing nation or a city anymore, a number of them are still found around. And from my house, I have one of these oil wells like this one in the center, about a mile from my house, or maybe even 3/4 of a mile up the hills behind my house. There's about 6 of them up there, and they're still pumping oil. And luckily for my neighborhood, part of what the license to continue operating is they have to donate money to a local charity that I sit on the board of. And they generate about $50,000 a year in royalties that we're able to do improvements and buy instruments for the bands and the high schools, and send them on field trips and sponsor street fairs and things like that. So Kind of interesting. We don't see it, we don't hear it, we don't smell it. It's up in a canyon 3/4 of a mile above the house. But there's a number of these scattered still around LA. No cattle ranches still around LA, but you can see here how many in 1952, how many of these derricks were, and we're going to see even more of them. So again, look at all of them in the background there. I went and found again where these are today, looking up the site of this well number 18. There's a US California Geological Department map because they do track where all these wells are, because every now and then one of these old capped wells will give way and start spilling stuff out into the environment. Or they have to be careful if you go to build on top of an area, how much of the area has been excavated or pumped out. And again, this is all housing and business today. No sign of any of this left. But this is what you'd see in 1952 Los Angeles. Very casual sort of roads, just stop signs, and just drive right up to the oil wells. They were all over. In this particular case, this is El Segundo. Again, oil wells all over the hills in the background. This is the corner of Grand Avenue and Richmond Street, El Segundo, and you can go on Google Maps today and view it. Shops have all changed. The buildings are there, but I don't think it's not a Safeway Market anymore. I think this big building down here is a car dealership, but it is kind of fun to go and map it. And the cars out on the street are nowhere near as cool as the ones here on this particular one. So you had your houses, and just down the street, you had your oil wells. Maybe somebody can tell us exactly what model and make that car is. But LA had a very different look. Again, this is all around El Segundo. And today that area has a bunch of refineries and that sort of thing. So you still often get a petroleum odor and that sort of thing as you drive around. We're going to go down now and visit Santa Monica. The Army and Navy Club is gone. Down below, you have a Pacific Coast Highway. Off to the right here, we're going to see more of it coming up in other shots. The incline that would take you from the upper road in Santa Monica down below. Cool, quiet day at the beach here today. And we're going to see again how this area is built up over time. So Santa Monica, this is Ocean Avenue in Santa Monica, very well named because it runs along the ocean. Looks very similar today, except over on the right-hand side, you're going to have nothing down this road but tall rise apartment buildings. Some of them, I say tall, I should qualify that. They may be 4 or 6 stories tall. They're not 20, 30, New York or 50-story tall buildings. But almost everything down here along here has been turned into to housing, apartment housing. It's interesting if you look at this shot, because you don't see boats moored out off of Santa Monica Beach anymore. The breakwater down there is still partially visible. It's mostly eroded over time, but there's no marina out there in this particular area like you will see in a number of these shots. The Santa Monica Pier is still there today, and we'll see other shots of that. But if you go out there today and take this picture, you're just going to see empty water and the boats are gone. You'll be very hard pressed to find a picture like this today of finding Pacific Coast Highway this empty. A lot of the areas, empty areas here, have been built up by either apartment buildings or by housing or by clubs and that. But the California Coastal Commission makes it very, very difficult to build along the beach, which is good because otherwise this would look just like Miami Beach and be filled with high rises. But I just do get a kick of how empty the roads are. Carol and I rarely ever go to the beach because it is so crowded in the summer and you're just in bumper to bumper traffic that when you look out here and you can enjoy it, an empty view, but it's kind of neat. Beverly Hills, nice picture of it in empty streets. Again, traffic has changed tremendously since 1952. Do not have any idea whose house this is, but kind of interesting, all the flowers up in the hills. Looking down towards Wilshire Boulevard, again, the air has improved a bunch. It looks like the 50s weren't anywhere near as bad as the 60s or 70s, but this whole area for a long time has had a problem with, air quality. Grauman's Chinese Theater. Okay, that's the end of 52. We're going to hop up here now. We're going to take a quick look at Busch Gardens. I don't remember if we did Busch in one of the other talks, but we're just going to jump to Busch Gardens in 1976. This was near the end of its heyday as a theme park. They had started as Busch Gardens, which was just going to be plants and birds, and come out for a monorail ride around the brewery and have all the beer you could drink after. They decided they were going to compete with Disneyland and put in a theme park area. This was Old St. Louis. They had shows inside, live performers, animal shows, that sort of thing. And it didn't last. And it was a combination of two things. One was they just couldn't compete against Disneyland. It was just economically not a real viable thing. Well, actually, three things. The second thing was the San Fernando Valley is not particularly a tourist-heavy environment. So not a lot of hotels, not a lot of things for people to come here and stay to go to Busch Gardens. And the third thing was people were drinking a lot more beer, and it became much more profitable for Busch to go and turn this into a giant brewery area and expand their manufacturing operations than it was to operate it as a theme park. So if you go by there today, their only remnant of the entire theme park is a bridge that used to connect over the railroad from one part of the park to the other. The bridge is not connected to anything. It's about 30 feet up in the air, the ramps at either end of it. And this area today is nothing but truck loading bays and giant vats of beer being brewed. So just shows you how theme parks and other things are transitory in nature. They had in this area a log flume ride, a bumper car ride, and matter of fact, here's the entrance going into the bumper cars here. But it was a pleasant enough spot to go. It was not free. You could still take the free brewery tour, and you could go and visit the breweries, but you had to go and pay to go into Old St. Louis. And they tried then to make the entire thing a paid venue, and unfortunately, it did not work. And we're going to go back to Griffith Park. Griffith Park is the largest park within a city boundary, I think anywhere in the United States. Carol and I live right near Melbourne Park, which is the second large. Our park is pretty much undeveloped. Griffith Park has all sorts of fun things in it. And one of the things, if you get out here to visit, is the California Live Steamers. These are miniature trains that they'll take you around for a ride on. And they have a preset schedule of when they are open to the public for rides. It's also right next door to Walt's Barn, which was where Walt had built his own steam train. And they also have open houses one day a month. I think the second Sunday, but you want to check that. But Griffith Park is kind of fun to go to. And a lot of the Disney animators, Frank and Ollie and others, would be out here with their steam trains back in the heyday. And it's kind of fun because you can go and may have to wait on the line. It may take you 45 minutes or an hour or something, but they don't charge you for it, and they'll put you on the train. And it's kind of interesting, again, if you're a train buff, to see the different engines that people have recreated. So, a traditional steam engine here, a smaller one here. It looks like the guy in the back is really taxing that train a bit, but the engineer, he's having fun. And we'll see some very different engines going around. They also have areas where you can come and watch them working on the trains. And a lot of these things are tremendous works of art. I mean, lots of brass work. They're, again, real functioning steam locomotives, building up pressure and, driving these little engines. And these guys really work very hard on them. So you start looking at some of these. If you didn't have the people in the background, you'd think you were looking at a genuine, steam engine. Just even the paint work and everything on them is kind of beautiful. And these things all run. It's kind of amazing that a little engine this small has the power to pull, one or two. I don't know how many cars this one particularly had. The very fact that this tiny little engine can pull a couple people around, to me, is kind of interesting. And Carol and I have taken the kids out there. We've also been out for events at the Disney barn. Well, they have a gate that goes between the two properties. They'll take you over and put you on the train and take you for a ride around it. So it's kind of fun. I recommend if you're out in the area to visit there. And we'll see some more in some of the different engines. We're going to take a look at another area folks may get a kick out of. Magic Mountain, another theme park. This is 1972 when the park first opened. This is the Gold Rusher roller coaster at the time. Off to the right, a funicular railroad taking people up. This area today is very much different, and it's grown over. When this park opened, everything out here was bare. You can see the trees have been planted, but it was brand new and they had not yet grown. Lots of empty area in the background. A lot of this has changed, having industrial parks, everything is built around. Some of the attractions also are not there anymore. This bumper boat ride was very much like Disneyland's Flying Saucers. You got in there and you could putt around in this boat ride, and then a giant arm would come by and sweep you all off to the side to get you out of there. Over time, things were very maintenance intensive, of course, fall prey to the wrecking ball, as do things that take up a lot of space because you can put other things in there. Here you can see this moving wall that's over here would kind of come and push all back in there so you could get back out. But it was a pretty popular ride back in 1972. These folks were obviously enjoying themselves. How much bumping you could do, I don't know, because I don't know how powerful the engines were, but folks went out and enjoyed it. Riding on the Skyway, out here, all these empty hills are no longer empty out there. It's changed tremendously. Matter of fact, this whole area, I think everything in this picture has changed from the time that Magic Mountain was built. Magic Mountain today is very intensive in roller coasters. It's one of the most popular theme parks in the United States for roller coaster aficionados. They have wooden roller coaster at Goliath. They have steel roller coasters, inverted roller coasters, roller coasters left and right. Not being a roller coaster fan, we tend not to go there very often. I believe the log flume ride did close recently. It was a very popular ride to go on. And again, this taking an upper view, you can see down below a monorail station, down below monorail car off to the right, the roller coaster going around, the log flume going down. Just about everything in this picture has changed now. Up in the background where the mouse is moving, you can see Interstate 5. Everything up here in this other part of the mouse area has been built and developed. And down here, the parking lot over here is where they built the Goliath roller coaster. And again, just some views. You'd be hard match finding where this is. This also, they built an entire second theme park out here of a water park. So a lot of the area which was not used for, heavily used for other rides has been developed into a water park. Funicular railway, up behind it's a giant tower, observation tower, and you can still see that as you drive into the area. If you're very good eyes and you're looking at the old TV show Baa Black Sheep, every now and then you can just capture a view of the observation tower out behind the views of what was supposed to be a South Pacific island, because the tower was so prominent it poked up over the hills. Then they would have live performers come out to Magic Mountain. Don't think they've done that for a number of years. And I don't have a name for this musician, but they also had more musicians. Come on, musicians, we'll get Rich Little, famous impressionist. He came out there and did a number of shows at Magic Mountain. So they would bring Hollywood celebrities out and they would give performances. We're going to jump from 1972 back into Griffith Park just for a minute, as soon as Bill gets a drink. Again, people have asked for pictures of trains, so we're going to get some miniature trains. There's also some pictures of some sort of different engines in this particular one. You can see, again, how they will let you come out, walk, to talk to trains, just like when they have air shows. I love people come up, we talk airplanes. They love to come out here and they'll talk trains and everything. You can also go out there at times. Some of the guys are selling their trains, and buyers are out there negotiating and taking test drives, and it's kind of fun to watch everything going on. Looks like these guys are getting ready for a race. They have some vintage train cars in the background that they use as storage sheds and clubhouse, meeting room, and that sort of area. Got to keep it oiled. And some guys have gone the other way. And besides live steamers, they built themselves little diesel engines. You would think this would be a bit of heresy, but you'll see a number of guys have built different diesels styled after famous ones. And there's some pretty interesting streamlined retro style ones as well. And you can see from this view just how large a train one of these small engines can haul around the area. Again, steam engine, but done with a very nice fairing and retro design. And they do need water, just like a real steam train. So they have a real water tank that you can pull your steam engine up to and fill it up with water. This is one kind of a fun one. Tunerville trolley. We'll see another picture of it coming along. But this guy had a real good sense of humor and decided to go with a different design. Sort of train engine here you might see in the beginning of the Adventures of Superman. And here's the Tunerville trolley. Isn't it just a kind of neat design for all fans of old cartoons and remembering all those crazy cartoons with that particular design? I got a real kick out of seeing that thing. But he's having a great time. And just a good view of their rail yard. They have off to the right, about the 4 o'clock position, a working turntable. That you'll take your train out of its storage shed, bring it out of the turntable, put it on one of these tracks to do all your maintenance and work on it and everything, and it's kind of fun. This guy built a small switcher engine, not something that you see on many train rail, on the active rail lines, but very, very popular in rail yards, moving freight cars, getting into position as the main trains are taken out. So again, kind of interesting to see how people built their little niches of what they would go for. So I think we've had enough trains for a little while, and we're going to take a look here. Let's see. Well, we'll skip those trains. I may have shown some of these in the past, but Marineland was a theme park out in Palos Verdes. It was a great spot to go to. You had killer whales out there. There was Orky and Corky, I believe the names were. And they came and gave shows. A little blurry here, but he's jumping up at the stadium. They come out and ride him around. They had dolphin shows. They had beluga whales. They had all sorts of things. Got bought by, I think it was Hardcore Grace and Jovanovich. And one night, in the middle of the night, they came in with trucks, took all the whales and other animals out and shut the park down, quote, to remodel it and refurbish it. And no, it was all torn out and became a country club. I forget the name of it off the top of my head right now. But this was too bad because it was a great spot to go out to and enjoy yourself. We're at the Japanese Gardens now, which were in Buena Park, California. And we've hopped down the road to Calico Saloon at Ghost Town. They just had a shootout. This guy is lost, but luckily they have a cart, but they have so many dead bodies, they take them away on a regular basis and, take them off to the Undertaker. And he's there ready for his next customer. I do not believe they have shootouts anymore at Knott's, just like they used to have shootouts at Disneyland. But today they are long gone. Quick back over to Marineland. Actually, I don't know if this is Marineland. I don't remember that they had a Skyway. This may be SeaWorld down in San Diego. They do have I have to think about that. I don't think this was Marineland. But again, killer whale shows. So just looking at the clock and looking at time, we'll skip over some more live steamers. 1959, we're going to jump down here. This is Wayfarers Chapel. It's a really nice wedding venue overlooking the Pacific. Again, you can book it and go out and have your wedding done out there, or you can just go and take a visit to it. So something about the full name of the Wayfarers Chapel, the Church of the New Jerusalem. And again, it's a great venue to go out and visit, very scenic grounds. If you've heard of Venice, California, this is it. It was built by a real estate developer and styled after the canals of Venice. It had been marshland and he wanted to reclaim it, but he did it with these canals and put out there. And it became, over time, very stank. The water flow over years had become full of algae and weeds and everything else. Then folks got together and said, hey, we have a real asset out here. Let's clean this area up. And Venice is a kind of interesting spot to visit today. The Venice Boardwalk had become absolutely inundated by the homeless, and a place you did not want to go unless you were in an Abrams battle tank. Luckily, the sheriff cleaned it out about 3 weeks ago, and you can now walk safely down the Venice Boardwalk. And you can go down the canal. As you can see, a sidewalk off to the side here going along the canal. And there are some very pretty areas you can go and visit. Very nice things with plants along the canals, and some very, very expensive real estate living along these canals. So if you've heard of Venice, California, but you've not seen it, come out and visit it. This is Fashion Square in Santa Ana, another vintage shopping center that has changed tremendously for anybody that lives down in that particular area. Bullock's being a very high-end department store. I don't know when the Bullock's chain was absorbed into something else, but this was the ladies' department store in many shopping centers around LA, as was the I. Magnin and Company. I thought folks would enjoy both this the signage, but also these vintage cars. This was obviously the age of tail fins. So somebody is probably looking back and ready and able to tell me exactly what make and model of years these things were. I enjoy cars, but I don't know them all that well. I believe we're at Forest Lawn again. More for Lawrence Welk. You could come out here to the studio where he's done and mention that it was broadcast every Saturday. And you could, again, be part of the studio audience and go out and see it. And we're back at the beach. We're at Santa Monica looking up the beach, and you can see back then how many oil wells are still in sight. Somewhere up in the desert overlooking the area. Going on a fishing boat. Fishing boats are no longer anywhere near as popular as they were in this period of time. There are still a number of them that run out of the, you have still a number of commercial fishing boats, but sport fishing got really depleted because they went absolutely bonkers and took everything out of the ocean that they could. So fishing kind of became self-regulating. Once there were no more fish to fish, the boating, sport fishing kind of died off. Whoops. And again, more oil wells all over the place. Hard to believe that right now, today, people live on top of where this once was. I don't have the name of the ship, but you could go out to the port of LA and just walk up and down and visit the ships that were out there. Some of them were open for tours, or you could just walk up and see them. And this was obviously a very productive oil field, because look how many of these pumps you have going, just 6 feet away or less from the next one. So they pumped this area like crazy. And then after all the oil wells, the person decided to take a picture or two at Disneyland. For the Disneyland fans, you can see the difference between the the cars at the Snow White attraction today, and then much more ornate and carved and looking today than they were back then. And they got a shot of the Peter Pan ride. And what I get a kick is looking back at this, they spent all that time in Southern California. They spent all that time taking pictures of oil wells. And these are the only 2 pictures they took of their entire visit to Disneyland. So I know where my priorities would have been, probably a little less oil wells. Corriganville, if folks have not heard of it, it was a tremendously large movie ranch out in Simi Valley, California. It's just if you go on the 118 freeway and you cross over from the San Fernando Valley into Simi Valley, it was off to the left-hand side, just to the south of the freeway. And it had been bought by this Rex Corrigan. He was a movie star and was in a lot of movies and ended up buying the ranch. And at one point in time, this was probably the largest theme park environment around. It's certainly much larger than Disneyland in terms of acreage, but you could go out there and they would sometimes they'd be filming, but they had all sorts of stunt shows and different things that were being done out there. If you watch the old TV show, The Adventures of Rin Tin Tin, that was shot out there. John Wayne movies were shot out there. So this was the entrance way to it. People coming out the exit there, just some pictures of what you would do. And then I threw it together as a, panorama. Corriganville was then later bought by Bob Hope and renamed to Hope Town. Hope operated for a couple of years, but his real interest in it was in real estate development. He shut it down. 99% of the area is now a giant subdivision, but the main part of the ranch itself is still out there as a park. Someday I can pop up some pictures of that. Free public park you can go through, and just concrete slabs left where all the foundations were for the western town and that. But you can go and see where Johnny Weissmuller did Tarzan movies. You can see where Robin Hood movies were filmed, all sorts of stuff. There's some interesting caves up there. And if you ever come out to LA and you want to go to Corriganville, let me know. I'm about 25 minutes away from it, and I'll be more than glad to go and meet you for a walk through Corriganville. Back out to Santa Monica. I think this is the last day that beach parking lot was ever that empty. Well, we're again looking at two piers here. The first one is the Santa Monica Pier that's still there today. The large set of buildings closer to the shoreline host the famous carousel, which you may have seen in the movie The Sting with Robert Redford and Paul Newman on it. In the back is another pier that was Pacific Ocean Park, which is sadly gone, burned down, and it's no longer with us. And again, the marina, which is off to the right of Santa Monica Pier, is no longer there. This was, oh yeah, okay, Wayfarers Chapel, another view of it. Sometimes I got to refresh my memory of what the names were of these things. So that was 1959. Let's see what we got in 71. We're jumping all over, and we're getting near the end. Okay. Long Beach Harbor. Off in the distance there, you can see a man-made island. There's actually Chaffee, Grissom, and Young Islands that were named for the astronauts that were killed in the Apollo 1 fire. The islands are out there because they are hiding oil derricks out in the ocean. And Marineland, the diver would come out, feed the fish. You had great underwater views to do it. And again, it was really sad. I enjoyed going out there. It was a nice spot, being right out in the ocean. It was generally a lot cooler and nicer weather than we have here in the valley. And it was a medium-sized theme park. It wasn't huge and crowded. So you actually had the chance. You can see here in the stands, for example, not exactly packed. Up in the parking lot, not particularly full this day. I guess that's probably why it fell victim to the real estate thing. But it was nice because it was intimate enough that you were able to get close enough to the animals and actually see them and not be sitting there watching from something, the 20, 30, 50 rows up in a set of bleachers. And again, just it was a fun spot to go to. They had different tanks out there. For a long time, the park sat empty about 10 years after they closed it, before they demolished most of it. And you go online and see all sorts of things that urban explorers got into the various stadiums and tanks and showed you what it was like in a derelict stage. But it was always very nicely manicured, great grounds. We've hopped over there and jumped to Pasadena, the Rose Bowl. If you were to go there today, this looks very, very much the same. The Rose Bowl has not changed a tremendous amount. And these fields are still around there. They use them for overflow parking for the Rose Bowl and other events. Hills above beautiful downtown Pasadena. They caught this on a nice day. LA Zoo, one of the most crowded places on the planet Earth these days. The last 2 times that we tried to go, we got to the parking lot and decided that it was just not going to work out. So it's popular. We had talked about the old LA Zoo. This is the new LA Zoo. They had an absolutely horrible zoo with very small cages and everything that they then rebuilt this zoo, and it became a world-class zoo and very, very popular. To my view, too popular. We popped back over to Knott's Berry Farm, watching their train chugging around. The Calico Saloon again off to the right. Parts of Knott's have changed so much. They used to have this giant, large lake in the middle of it. I think we've seen some pictures of the riverboat that was out there. This is where I believe the Revolution roller coaster was later put in. Things have changed so much. Stagecoach ride running around. This sculpture is still there, showing how an old mill worked by, you could use grist by having the mules just go around and around and around, pulling the stone around and grinding things down. Boat ride that's long, long gone from Knott's. She looks thrilled waiting for the ride to start. And their log flume ride, which is really spectacular. They've redone it in most recent years to put newer figures in it, because the ride was always very good. The figures, I would not call them audio animatronics. They were nowhere near the caliber of a Disney thing. They were always very poor looking and a real letdown for the rest of the ride, but they really stepped it up. And street characters would just sit out here and talk to you. And again, they stayed in character and didn't know why on earth all you strangeans are coming visiting our little town. Sadly, like Disneyland, most of the street entertainment is gone. It's just they don't pay people to do it anymore. And let's hop over to Disneyland real quick, because if we're going to be all the way in South California, we'll take a picture. And this is totally gone from Disneyland. The Three Sisters Falls. It was called by Cascade Falls, a number of different names. The wood underneath it wore out, and the Disney management under the Paul Presley years did not see it fit to replace it. They just tore it down, and what a shame, because how hard would it have been to replace it? We hop over to Mann's Chinese Theater and Jeanette McDonald's signature. Again, the Hollywood Bowl, you can see now they put some sort of platform out in front of the across the fountain. The fountain is gone. No idea what the panels were across the stage at that point in time. Back to Forest Lawn. We're hopping all over the place. You can't get to LA around the real LA this fast. Award to Jean Hersholt, who was a humanitarian, and the whole plaque down below goes through the life. Picture of the building up on the hill. Back to the Hollywood Bowl. Sometimes these things are a bit out of order. You can see we're up in the bleachers area now, and you can come out, as I mentioned earlier, bring your picnic basket, or you can buy food out there. Just got a hot dog and come and sit in the stands. But it's a great spot if you're in LA to come and soak up some atmosphere. Obligatory Grauman's shot. And look, there's an empty star. It's kind of funny. There are people that love to do something that's kind of fun. They make a plastic overlay. They get the dimensions of the star, and they'll get a plastic overlay and put their own name on it. So you can go out there and have the name of, Carolyn Peterson, and put it out there on plastic. Come out there and drop it on one of these empty stars and get your picture taken and look like you've been immortalized. And our trip to LA ends with a visit back to LAX, and that's the famous theme structure. People thought it was a control tower. No, it was a restaurant. I believe it's been closed for a number of years now. Disney Imagineers came in and tried to revitalize it. but it's probably the worst place in the United States to build a restaurant. I mean, really, I mean, maybe if you built a restaurant at the bottom of Death Valley or the bottom of the Grand Canyon, it could be worse. But if you want to go out to LAX to go to a restaurant and you have to fight traffic for an hour and a half to get out there, then you got to pay $30 an hour or something to park, and then you got to fight another hour to get back out. Nobody, I mean, the first time Carol met my dad was out at this restaurant back in the 70s. Back then you could drive to LAX. He was changing planes between flights. We went out, had a real nice dinner with him out there. Today, you'd be absolutely out of your mind to say, hey, let's meet at LAX for dinner. It just wouldn't work. Got one real quick thing we'll look before we leave. This is Lion Country Safari. It was a giant theme park where you could get in your cars, drive around, and you had all sorts of animals out there. Very, very popular, and unfortunately, as you can imagine, it used an awful lot of land. This was not the vehicles you drove in. This is just a small photo op thing on a ride around mechanical car sort of thing. But this area became super, super valuable to real estate developers. You can get on your hippo boat ride here and go out. People that live nearby would talk about how you could hear the lions roaring at night, that sort of thing. And unfortunately, it fell victim to the developers. This was a real kick. This was actually not unique to Lion Country Safari. You could buy these water fountains, stick your head into the jaws of a lion and get a drink of water. And the Lions International, the Lions Club, sponsored a lot of these and put these in city parks all across the United States. That it was something they asked each of their local Lions clubs to go and buy and put in their park. So it's kind of fun as you see other pictures around the country trying to figure out, whoa, what's that doing out there from Lion Country Safari? Nope, they're there from the Lions Club International. So I think we'll end it now before we go too late with pictures of LA. And I hope, oh yeah, the Terranea Resort. Thanks for mentioning it. I knew it was Terra something. I was saying Terra Nova, and I knew that was wrong. So Terranea, thank you very much. So yeah, the LA, are you saying, Don, the restaurants inside the secure area?
Yeah, that's what happened. Basically, when security got jacked up a lot, they moved the restaurant inside the secured area. So it became a real pain to get to. And as you know, just going to that airport's a pain. So they just abandoned the whole thing. And it may not be inside the secured area anymore, but they never reopened it.
Yeah, it was really it was really too bad. Like I said, it was funny. My dad used to travel like I did for business, and he was going somewhere through LA. And he said he's got 2-3 hours. So Carol and I went out there, and she had met. She was worried about meeting the father sort of thing. We had a great time, and found out my dad liked what you call it, guacamole, which is the first. And as a matter of fact, my dad found it for the first time. He liked guacamole because it was not a big thing on Long Island. And we got there, and there was this thing of guacamole, and he tried it. The rest of his life, my dad was hooked on guacamole. So it's funny you get to LAX. The way the memories all connect together. So that was great fun. And I tried it for the first time, and I will say my father is the only Bill Cotter that has ever liked guacamole, so he could have it.
Another reason not to move to Texas then.
Yeah.
It's everywhere here. But it's funny. I've eaten it there twice because I'd heard the Imagineers had redesigned it. And the second time I was coming home, Mandy and I were coming home from vacation in California. We were eating in Encounters, and as we were walking out of the restaurant, we ran into a friend of ours who we had no idea. She was on her way home from Singapore. She'd been living there for 2 years, and we just ran into each other at the restaurant. So it was a nice place. So if you ever got a chance to do it after the Imagineers reopened it, it was really nice redesign. I'm sorry it had to die.
Yeah.
What you're saying, Don, is that you encountered your friend at Encounters?
I did indeed. But a bunch.
It brings terrible other alternate names to mind that I will not bring up. So it's a good thing they didn't call it some other things. People were mentioning in the comments about Pacific Ocean Park. I didn't go into other pictures of those because I'd done those in a prior talk about vanished things from LA. If you can go back to the YouTube page, you can find it. again, Pacific Ocean Park is gone before the time I got here, so I've only seen it in memories. But it shows up in a whole bunch of TV shows and movies, like the finale, I think, of the Fugitive was shot out there, and then it's in the episodes of The Man from U.N.C.L.E. and stuff. So I'd seen it growing up back east. And Carol, when you were growing up, did you go to Pacific Ocean Park?
Yeah, I remember that it was a little bit of a disappointment because the entrance was fabulous and you went down in this whatever you call it when it goes down, an elevator that goes down into the ocean, and it opened on the other side and it was just a regular amusement park.
Sort of like the hydrolators at what you call it, the Living Seas Pavilion. You get in them, and they think you're taking you into the ocean.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
but the entrance was fabulous. I think they went all out on that. They probably spent all their money there,
Hey, they got you inside and got your ticket money. It worked, right?
I guess. I have
but-
no idea how much it costs to go in, but
Yeah, Greg Abbott is mentioning he spent most of his childhood at POP. Go back to the video, or someday, Greg, Greg, did you take any pictures at Pacific Ocean Park and that you can share us some other time? You there, Greg? You came off mute, but we don't hear you, Greg. Nope, Greg's being shy, or his microphone is not working today. No, I just thought folks, particularly those that live out here, might enjoy the views of the area. Now, Glenn or Brock, you're both, been in LA a long time. Were you LA natives, or what time did you get out here? Did you guys see any of this stuff in person?
Oh, I was born in LA, so I'm an LA native. And I did have some comments to mention. You were talking about the City Hall. For the longest time, it was the tallest building in downtown LA. And they actually had to work at that because as they started building high rises in LA, which didn't happen as quickly as like the East Coast, New York and other cities because of the concerns and fears of earthquakes and all that. They for a while had a moratorium on how high they could be for partially safety. And part of it was because they wanted the City Hall to be the tallest building. And finally, they lifted that moratorium. The first building that went up that was going to be taller than it, what they did was they passed a resolution in the city council that the basement became the first floor. And that made it one floor higher than the new building they were building. So it was technically still the tallest building in LA. But then the next one they built went past it by 10 or 15 floors. So it was like a moot point after that. But it was so funny how that was a big deal for a long time. And Carol might know that too if she lived out here.
I don't remember that part of it, but I came out here when I was a year old. I was going to mention about Marineland, though, that there's a lot of problem with land shifting down there. And I think that was one of the reasons that things didn't get built up again. And I don't know about the Terrania, what they did, but I know that whole area, there are fissures in the earth and all that kind of thing. So it's been a problem.
Yeah, if you go to where Marineland was and head north of there, you go through an area called Portuguese Bend. And the road just is all over the place. And you can look down below into the ocean area and see where the old road used to be, because the whole thing is collapsed and there's all sorts of stuff down there. So that area is a very active fault line, and it just keeps slipping and slipping. And as Carol mentioned, you can't build out there. I mean, maybe if you want to build a fun house or something, but it's crazy. You know, it's one thing, Brock, I'm glad you mentioned that. You reaffirmed my belief that the politicians of those days are no different than the politicians today. Because imagine spending the time and effort to vote to make the City Hall basement a working floor, you know? Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah, Harold mentioned City Hall badges on Dragnet. We still have those on the badges today. The LAPD badge looks just the same. Hey, Glenn, you got your hand up?
Yeah, you asked about being natives. Yeah, I was born actually in Hollywood at the Cedars of Lebanon Hospital, which is now the Scientology Center on Vermont. And something else to point out about Marineland was they shot a lot of a show out there called Sea Hunt with Lloyd Bridges. And they have a restaurant at the Terranea called Nelson's, which is kind of a middle scale restaurant, but it's a beautiful patio overlooking the ocean. And they have a lot of props, or not props, but magazines and stuff with sea hunt related things. So Mike Nelson was the character.
Oh, that's
Another place that just happens to be on my thing behind me, is you recognize that,
yeah.
Yeah, the
Griffith.
observatory.
the observatory at Griffith Park. That's, I don't know if it's even open now, but that's a great place to go at night. The city view is spectacular from up there.
Yeah, we did, Carolyn did a talk a couple of weeks ago about Griffith Park. You may have missed that one.
I did, yeah.
Oh, yeah. She went through a great talk on how it was all built, the issues of getting it done in the early days, and then the bigger issues they had of modernizing and putting in a whole giant expansion they did. So you might want to go back out to the YouTube thing and take a look at it. It's a great view.
Yeah, there's several of these that I've missed, and I'm really appreciative that you're putting them up.
Yeah, we appreciate Carolyn doing it. Now, somebody mentioned here that no La Brea tar pits. I call myself a Zorro fan. Again, I've been to La Brea tar pits, but I used all pictures from before I got out here, trying to go back to go to the antique sort of days. So if anybody wants to see my pictures with my kids, we can spend a lot of time because we've been all over LA. But yeah, I had more pictures. I cut it off for time. Each of these things should go on and on. But I just thought, some things like the La Brea tar pits have not changed a tremendous amount from back then to today. They put in, some newer pavilions where you can watch them doing excavations and that. But I wanted to go for things that are pretty much gone, like all those oil wells or, things along that line. I mean, you look at that today and, you think, oh my God, that was LA, just, mile after mile after mile of oil wells. You guys that live out here, do you remember about 20 years ago when they had, it was somewhere on Wilshire Boulevard, one of the oil wells, old oil wells, gas came out and ignited, and they had flames burning along Wilshire Boulevard.
I thought that was in the Fairfax area.
Might have been in Fairfax.
Yeah.
I can't remember actually where it was, but people, all of a sudden somebody throws a cigarette butt down the street, boom, the whole street goes up. And it was one of these oil wells that came uncapped, and it went on for a while, that was fire coming out of manholes and sewers and all over the place.
I think that's pretty active still down there. That's where the tar pits is.
Yeah.
So,
And even though they would have abandoned it as an oil well, it's still producing, because of the oil in there, a lot of natural gas that over time accumulates. And then if it finds a vent out, now it's going to burn.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why they keep
where
track of where these things were, so they could try to figure out where's it coming from.
Yeah, where we lived in Westchester out by the airport, there was a period in time, and I remember my grandparents owned the house where they actually sold. There was a company coming around that wanted to buy the mineral rights, actually the oil rights, under all the homes built in these places, and they had to deal with every individual owner. If you gave them the right, they were going to drill from like a mile away or someplace off to the ways away under, because they knew there was oil underneath there. And so my grandparents got, I don't know, a few $1,000s because they sold them the rights to drill under the house from some distant place. So oil has been a part of LA for a long time.
Actually, our house here has that covenant in our deed that when this area was developed, because again, I've got an oil well 3/4 of a mile away from me. They were saying, well, there might be oil here. So they have the right to drill underneath our house. Luckily, when they explored it, they found there's nothing down there except maybe Jimmy Hoffa. So, there's no reason to drill. But when I looked up the deed, I said, what the hell do you mean they have the right to drill an oil well under my house? Sorry.
another kind of out of the way place is, you mentioned the zoo. And I don't know if any of your talks, you mentioned the Griffith Park merry-go-round, which is still there.
Right.
And that's where Walt took his daughters and, the whole story. And then up behind the merry-go-round, you go up a trail and you walk up a hill and you come to where the old zoo was. And they still have the cages, these grottos that had the tigers and lions, and it's got the bars on it, all rusted out. You can put your kids in there and take pictures of them and stuff. I think they shoot a lot of horror movies up there, but it's kind of a out of the way place if you run out of things to do. It's fun. There's lots of things like that. The Batman Cave, the
Oh, yeah,
Bronson Cave, I think it's called,
Yep.
which is not really a cave. It's more like a tunnel, but you can walk through there. And there's a lot of interesting walks. Have you ever done the stairs over there at below the Hollywood sign?
Yep.
There's these huge flights of stairs that you can walk, and it's, you know, like you go up 150 stairs and then down a street, and all the old houses that were built there during the Hollywood's heyday.
Well, again, you mentioned something I just indulge myself and share for a second. The Griffith Park merry-go-round. This is Carol and Margot out there.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Yeah, and again, I didn't go. I have tons of pictures of our travels all around LA, but you know, this is one of my favorite pictures of Margot just sitting there. You know, she's no longer has blonde hair and it's no longer curly, but she's just out there having a great time watching the merry-go-round, going around and having her box of popcorn. She's just enjoying herself. And oh, that's the horse I want to go ride. So she would kill me if she saw this today, but you know, we had a great fun out there. And then Griffith Park is great for folks that are, I mentioned Travel Town, but there's so many other things out there at Griffith Park that we went and did. You can go up and you can ride, you know, horses. And this is over in the Burbank area. You could ride horses, which I used to sometimes at Disney finish, you know, the day, go for a horseback ride, or hey, in the middle of the day, I'll just go for a horseback ride. It was all of half a mile down the street from the studio. And you could rent a horse, ride from Griffith Park, and you just have a great time. So yeah, I tell you, if we ever have the pandemic ever, we ought to all just go for a field trip someday and hop from spot to spot. Go to the Music Box Steps from the Laurel and Hardy. You know, you guys ever been there?
I'm sorry, which place?
The Music Box.
Oh yeah, yeah, Los Feliz. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a little plaque there that mentions it.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. We have just again right near my house a set of stairs that go up from one street to another, and it's very weird, you know, because it basically is so people in that housing complex could walk down the steps to the school at the bottom of it. But you know, you get there and we'll be out on like patrol for the LAPD, and they say, "Oh, the suspects, whatever." I said, "We might have run up the steps." And somebody said, "What steps are you talking about?" And you have to show them that there's a flight of stairs that goes up the hill to the next, you know, next neighborhood. And people are just amazed how many of those staircases there are here around LA. But we get a kick of showing it to people. So Magic Mountain is still up there, and is she the one we thank for the waffles? Yes, Margot is the daughter we thank for the waffles.
Oh.
Yeah, she's the one that got the pack of waffle mix, and that other people, a number of people wrote to me, they were really good. So if you've not tried them yet, go try the Belgian waffles. Now, Carol did mention, by the way, that you know, we looked at LA, but people live in other parts of the country that you may have something in your city that you find interesting, or you think other people would enjoy. Next week, for example, I may do vintage New York, where I'm originally from, and start looking at, you know, the old Macy Day parades from the 50s and 60s, things that I actually went to, and then you know, some other you know, real estate, you know, buildings being built or torn down or whatever. But if you're in other parts of the country and you'd like to give us a tour, and it doesn't necessarily need to be vintage, you know, I mean, you want to go and show us the greatest hits of Podunk, and you live in Podunk, you know, we're trying to figure out where we can go when we can all travel again. So, you know, and I love history, you know, and seeing the history of places I haven't been gives me a reason to go there and see it, sort of thing. So, you know, it's just different. So any other memories of LA or things that I mean, again, there's all sorts of places I didn't put. Yeah, Wayne?
Yeah, as a non-native tourist in the 70s, I recognize a lot of those attractions looking that way. But the most interesting to me was one time, as part of my job, I stayed at the Beverly Hills Hotel, and I was engineering support for a video player prototype. So that was the salesman and me, and the player broke down when we had clients coming, and we had to get glue to reconnect the high voltage. So I went down to the lobby, hailed a cab, got in and said, take me to the nearest hardware store. The cabbie looked at me and said, in Beverly Hills? And, but we found one, and the only glue I could find had to be heated. So we got back to the hotel, called room service and said, we need some really hot water. And they said, oh, do you want tea or coffee? And I said, no, we want it for our glue. And they confused the fellow, brought a silver coffee pot full of hot water to repair our equipment.
That's neat. Well, I've got a picture here I didn't show, but I'll pop it up just for you, Wayne, since you're big into broadcasting and stuff. So here, 1 second. That was the view that we saw for many years driving through beautiful downtown Burbank before they sold off the NBC studios and moved everything over to a Universal. But this, if you ever watch old episodes of the Tonight Show and Johnny Carson's talking about everybody waiting outside, this was where you waited. Right out here in front of this building was where the Tonight Show was done. And then across the street, he jokes about a liquor store and other stuff that was all out there. So that's all changed and, not there anymore. Got two people with their hands raised. 1 second. Derek said, didn't Pacific Ocean Park popularize the concept of pay one price to get in, POP again, versus pay for ride? I don't know because I wasn't here. Anybody else remember that was the case?
I think that's true, actually. I have a book on the subject. I think they mentioned that in there somewhere.
Okay, thank you. Carolyn, you had your hand up first, then we'll get to you, Greg.
Oh, I was just going to say Griffith is open on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. They have not been able to hire their staff back completely, and they have pretty heavy pandemic restrictions on them just yet. So they're only open 3 days a week.
Oh, okay.
You can go up there and walk around the grounds anytime you want, but just getting in the building is just those 3 days.
Right. Yeah, just if you go up there again, as Carolyn showed in her presentation, so many movies and things shot up there. I mean, you had, the James Dean scenes up there. Again, if you're a Man from U.N.C.L.E. fan, you go up there and they shot, up there. It was supposed to be an observatory in Switzerland, and you can see Napoleon Solo stealing a motorcycle out in front of it and running through the hills. And they had other things, Glenn mentioned the Bronson Caves. Man from U.N.C.L.E. had a big shootout there in the gravel pit out in front of it and did all sorts of things. So Griffith Park is just a great spot to go to. Just tremendous thing out there. And they got a golf course, at least one, if not two golf courses out there, the archery range. There's all sorts of stuff to do out there. So it's a fun spot. And Greg is saying that Pacific Ocean Park had separate charges, not one price. And Derek G said he thinks Six Flags over Texas introduced pay one price. And then now, wherever it was, they probably brought it in at some point in time, and they probably took advantage of the POP initials and did that. Edgewater Park, $1.50 for all day. Well, that's a hell of a deal.
Wow. And by the way, if anyone's that interested in Pacific Ocean Park, there's a folded up there. There's an outstanding book on the topic, just called Pacific Ocean Park. It's on Amazon. Really worth the read. It's a very good history of the park. Look up Pacific.
One more book to add to.
Yeah, I've got to buy a new bookcase. I'm running out of space.
I've got to buy a new house. I ran out of space. We had one bedroom in the house that Carol very graciously allowed me to turn into a library. So I had floor to ceiling bookshelves built in it, and by a guy that did cabinetry work for all the studios and everything. And I filled that up, and I said, well, this empty wall in the guest room, we could put a bookcase in there, couldn't we? And so we did that. And I said, oh, the back wall of my closet, I really don't have any need for that, so I could put books in there. And I said, well, I've run out of wall split bookcases, and I can just stack books in front of the bookcases in the library. So right now, the house is a testament to how strong it is that the library has not collapsed into the room below it because of the amount of books that are in there. And I was in
Yeah,
there.
and then after the earthquake or during one of the aftershocks, the whole cabinets broke loose from the wall and all the books tumbled again after your father and brother had put them back up.
Yeah, all the books came down in the earthquake, and then the closet of that bedroom I had turned into a video library. So a shelf after shelf of videotapes. They all came down. My brother and father came out. Where do you want everything put? You know, what order? I said, I don't care. Just get it off the floor. I'll sort it out later. So they spent days up there in that room just putting books on bookshelves, trying to fit everything up there. And then it's the funny thing you remember that we had a 5.5 aftershock come through. My brother and father flew out of that room, down the hall, down the steps, and out the front door, just like in a cartoon, without ever touching the floor. It was just wow. And Carol and I were, what? We've had worse than this. You know, we were still cleaning up the kitchen or something. And they said they were just scared to death. And then my brother said, we've got to go and put all that shit back again. So yeah. And we later since did sort it out, but yeah, it was funny. By the end of 5.5, we had thought nothing, but they had flown out from New York to help us with it, so they were pretty well shook. Well, again, I appreciate folks joining. I hope look back at LA.
Hey, Bill?
Did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that my favorite LA landmark that I used to visit, when I would visit, I would go look at it. One time I just went running by it so I could look at it close. I actually went inside it once. Besides Sleeping Beauty Castle was the Hanna-Barbera building on 34 Cahuenga. It's now part of the LA Conservancy and it's still there. There's actually a sign behind it. Well, if you go into the parking lot behind it, there's a small sign with a picture of Dino that commemorates what it used to be. And there are little Dino tracks on the pavement that lead to the sign. It's not very much, but it's still an operative building and they still rent space in it. They built an LA Fitness next to it, but a lot of people say it turned into an LA Fitness, but it is not. The annex building was turned into the Fitness. And when I joined LA Fitness so that, and I can't go now because of COVID, so that when I swim in the pool, I could see a portion of the building, which I just find very cool. Because I grew up watching specials where they would show that building. You know, Hanna-Barbera would land in a helicopter, you know, in front of their building so they could promote the Adamant Secret Squirrel show and things like that. So, you know, to me, it's just a super cool building. And they used to have pictures of the characters on it too.
Yeah, I remember when I got out here and, you know, trying to get to know LA and everything. I was staying at the Sheraton Universal and Disney moved me out here. And where do I go? I drive down the street and oh my God, you know, there's the Hanna-Barbera building. And that was just so cool to see. And we were just talking on Facebook off to the right-hand side. Do you remember when Dean Jeffries had his car styling shop over there?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he did a whole bunch of, you know, cars, besides all the work he did on Star Trek and other stuff. He had done some, he did this one big vehicle. It's called something like the Land Ram. And I forget the name of the movie, maybe a science fiction movie enthusiasts can remember. It was a giant articulated vehicle and the tires were it was a triangular set of tires, tire at the top. And the idea in the movie was they'd get to a giant rock and the thing would go up over and the tires would, you know, lift it up and rotate over. And it was there on the side of Cahuenga for years and years and years. And finally, one day I was just driving by and I pulled over and said, what is that thing? And oh, come on in. They'll give you a whole tour of the shop. And, you know, it was really great. And then I forgot to show today a picture of the George Barris studios where they did the Batmobile and everything. It was just, you know, a storefront in North Hollywood. Oh yeah, Damnation Alley. Thank you, Dan. It's exactly what it was called. The Land Ram from Damnation Alley. But George Barris, again, you could just drive up, park, and walk in and say, hi. Oh, hi, would you like to sit in the Batmobile? If you're like, oh, yeah, okay. And here's the Munster coach. And right in the front of the door, window for years was Bob Hope's golf cart with his, you know, famous caricature of his face on it and everything. And these people were just so nice. You could just walk in and, yeah, Dean Jeffries at the Monkey Mobile. Big controversy online how George Barris would start copying things and bringing them out to car shows and inferring that he was the original designer. So interesting. But all these guys' shops were just there. Hey, Brock, go ahead.
I was going to say there was another thing I just remembered as a child, and Glenn might know something about this too, since he was born here. There was a little place called Ferndale
Oh,
in a little residential area, I believe, and it was this beautiful little stream running through this little beautiful garden area. I went there as a very small kid, but there was some goldfish or koi in the water that ran through, I think. And you could just go there and wander through. My mom would take us there and we'd spend an afternoon, and we maybe take a little lunch with us or something like that. But it was just a small little beautiful out of the way place that you just walk through. And it was kind of weird that it was right in the middle of the city.
I think that was right near the Greek Theater.
yeah.
It might have been. Again, I was very young when I was taken there, and I don't recollect exactly where it was. I just remembered it
Well,
as
if you
a
take-
neat little place.
If you take the road off of, is it Franklin that goes up to the Griffith Park Observatory? You make a bend and it's right at that bend,
Okay.
and you can park there, and there's a walkway that goes along the streams. And it's very pretty. I don't know if it's got water in it.
Yeah, maybe it doesn't anymore. It used to have a little stream that ran through it,
Well,
and it was very ferns.
It got into really bad shape over the years, and then Tom LaBonge, the city councilman who was from that area, put a big effort into getting it revived and fixing it up, cleaning out the stream, and putting some of the walkways back in. So it's still there. It's over on as Glenn mentioned, sort of on the Los Feliz side of things, or going up that side of Griffith Park. But yeah, Tom LaBonge helped bring that back from the dead.
I put some
Another
things in the chat. Angel's Flight. I don't
Oh,
know if
yeah.
you've mentioned that before. Bradley Building, Grand Central Market downtown. You do a trip down to Los Angeles, you got to see all those things.
Yeah, I mean, again, the Angel's Flight, it's never worked. Every time I've tried to go there, it's managed to kill somebody and they shut it down. But
Yeah.
for the folks that don't know, it was a funicular railroad that ran from, one part of the hill up to the other, and then they were going to develop that. So they took it down, stored it for years, the Olivet, and I forget the name of the other car. They stored them in a warehouse for years, finally rebuilt it. It started running, and then the cable snapped and it came down, somebody got killed, so not good. And I actually worked right not near there, downtown for a while, and I'd walk by the damn thing all the time. It's like, please open up. And I'd walk up the stairs that ran next to it. Do you know, Glenn, if it's open now again or not?
I don't know. I check real fast, but I have been on it several times, and it's really fun. There's a restaurant up on top and a little fountain show, fountain show, like a Magic Waters thing.
Yeah.
Oh, and geez, then the Biltmore Hotel down there is beautiful to see.
Great spots. You mentioned Grand Central Market. We used to go there for lunch, and it's gone like many other things. Now they've upscaled it a lot.
Right.
But it was this tremendous old ancient building with all these stalls that you'd go in and get there and, go get food. And the Bradbury building, if you're a fan of Blade Runner, you've probably seen that. It's where LAPD has the Internal Affairs Office. So when you mention I'm going to the Bradbury building, people, oh, what do you do now? But it's a wonderful building, great architecture. It's really a must see.
It's just something to see, and the stairways in there and all the old ironwork and the elevator and stuff like that. It's just really spectacular.
Yeah, and the Biltmore Hotel just across the street from the park there. Again, people have seen these things, but you may not realize if it's part of Ghostbusters, where they're ostensibly in New York getting the ghost out of the ballroom. They're actually at the Biltmore Hotel in LA. Much easier to shoot at here than go all the way to New York. But yeah, I mean, again, I could take people through all these places because I've taken a lot of pictures, but I went the ancient route. But boy, you're making me want to jump in the car today, Glenn, and just go.
No, and Clifton's Cafeteria has been reopened.
Yeah,
and that's a really interesting spot. Andrew Myron, the guy that built the Edison downtown nightclub, kind of a restaurant that's fabulous. Just Google the Edison downtown Los Angeles and look at the pictures in there. It was the original power plant for that building.
Yeah.
And Andrew, it was filled with water, and he came to Imagineering and gave us a talk about it, how he rented a boat and got in there and looked around and said, yeah, this will work. So they pumped it all out, and he turned it into this fabulous restaurant nightclub. And it's still got all of the motor generators in there for the power. Have you been in there, Bill?
No, I haven't. That's
Yeah. Again, I don't know the hours of it with COVID, but if it opens up again, it's very much worth seeing, especially if you go early, before it gets really crowded.
I used to.
Clifton's was I'm sorry, Clifton's was a big spot for Disney, wasn't it? He really liked to go to Clifton's, as I understand.
Well, there are a number of them, and I think this is the only one left, but there were about 3 or 4 of them.
Mhm.
One was a Hawaiian theme. This one's kind of a outdoor woods kind of a thing.
There was one in Covina or West Covina that we used to stop at on the way up to our house at Lake Arrowhead.
Mm.
I don't think it was themed. Maybe it was. I don't remember that. But it was kind of a special thing to go to a cafeteria because we weren't used to it.
But talking about the building with the generators and everything, there was another building, I forget the exact name of it right now, that I parked across the street from, was where the old subway depot was in downtown LA. You know, the one that the red cars ran into. And they basically sealed it off, and the building was empty. It had been abandoned for years, and it's now since been developed into condos. But the old subway station was still down at the bottom. And again, the urban explorers have gone down, and you can see the signs, track 1, ticket office here. And I walked over one day and there was a guard there, and I said, you know, is the subway station still down there? He said, oh yeah, it was down there last night. I was like, oh, could you please take me down? He goes, no, the last guy that took somebody down got fired that same afternoon, and I need to keep my job. And I was like, if you're ever getting ready to quit, would you please just call me? I'll make it worth your while. I so much wanted to get down there and see it. And it's still supposedly underneath that the building of condos and that sort of thing. But that's where the tunnel would go. And it got, when they built the Biltmore Hotel, they bisected the tunnel because the tunnel would still, you can go out to where the tunnel used to end and it's all sealed off. And they used it for all sorts of things. Like we used it for the TV show V, and it's been used in the movie MacArthur. But the tunnel ran for quite a while, and now the Biltmore Hotel bisected it so they can never use it again. But I would just be heartbroken knowing the other side of that door was this giant piece of LA history, and I can't get down there. So yeah, I tried. So
There's some great theaters. The Los Angeles Theater, spectacular. And during the summer, they have had, again, you know, COVID, but they'd have a last remaining seats. I think it was the LA Conservancy that put this on. And so they would run old movies. I think we saw Footlight Parade in there. And Ruby Keeler was the guest. And so if you can ever hook up to any of those things, it's really fun.
We were that close to going before COVID. Carol and I had gone to a flea market over at the Pasadena Community College. And we were walking through and I saw somebody and he looked at me and we knew each other. It was a guy that worked at the Disney Studios. He had been in accounting. I'd been in audit at the time. So we started talking and what are you doing these days? And he was a member of that conservancy. And he was like, oh yeah, well, you know, we get great tours and I can get you in and that sort of thing. And bam, COVID comes along. I still got his number in case it ever comes back. But yeah, I really want to take that theater tour. It looks spectacular.
Well, one thing I want to do someday, Bill, and you might know who can get us on it, is the Goodyear blimp.
If I knew that, I'd be on it. Did I ever tell you my, I don't know, I didn't tell you, but ever hear my Goodyear blimp story?
I don't think so.
My Carol and I went to Florida. I had to, we were down visiting my folks that come down, and we were going to Disney World. But there's a P-51 Mustang you can fly at Kissimmee, and I wanted to fly a P-51 Mustang. So I went out and rented it for an hour. And for those that don't know, a P-51 was the premier fighter for World War II. And they have a dual control one that you can go on fly in Kissimmee. And Carol was very, very understanding because I think, and this was 20 years ago, it was $1,700 an hour to rent this thing. So I went off and we flew the P-51, and the guy was, he was great because I had a T-6 Texan, also a tail dragger. He was like, oh, you know how to fly a tail dragger, let's go. And we were out flying over the Air Force Eastern Test Range, and down below there's a train going. And he says, what do you see down there? I said, well, it looks like Amtrak. He goes, no, you're in a P-51 Mustang. We're over occupied France. So I'm going to ask you again what you see. And I said, German troop train. He goes, what are we going to do about it? Whoa, how we went. And they have cameras in the plane to record the whole thing. Well, we're coming into land, and the tower could say me says, "Be advised, the Goodyear blimp's in the pattern." So the other guy says, "Yeah, I don't think he's going to be much of a problem for us. Thanks." So we came and we made a circle around the Goodyear blimp. I came down, did a touch and go, went back up, made another circle around the Goodyear blimp, touch and go. Finally, one more circle, and I landed. So that night, my dad and I were in a bar in the hotel, and I'm just, wow, I flew a P-51 Mustang. It was really cool. And these two guys come in with Goodyear jackets and sit down at the bar next to us. And the guy says, "Boy, that was an amazing thing today. I've always wanted to go up in that blimp." And the guy said, "Well, the blimp, how about that P-51 buzzing us?" So I said to the guy, I said, "Oh my God, that was me flying the P-51. Is there any way you could get me up in the blimp?" And the guy said, "It took me 20 years of selling tires to get up in the blimp. Good luck." So I gather it's very, very hard to get up in it. And do we still have the one here in LA? I haven't seen it in
I think so.
Yeah, driving down the 405. Because I know they had to take it off and they brought a new one in when that one wore out. But I haven't driven down the 405 in a while.
Well, then there's a Fuji blimp too. Is that still flying?
I
Remember that one?
Seen too many around. But yeah, the Goodyear blimp, I'd love to go for a blimp ride. It's on the bucket list. Maybe I'll start selling tires.
Well, I'd like to fly it over the Pebble Beach golf game. When they have the AT&T, they have these spectacular shots of whales and everything else out there from the blimp.
Yeah, it's great stuff. Tom, I would let you in. Maybe you go as a movie site locator. Do you have access, Tom, to the which do you have theaters to the subway station? Tom still with us? He said he could let us in, but there he is. Yeah.
Yes. No, I'm not. I'm just saying I would let you in if I was that guard.
Oh.
Then I was saying that maybe you could pretend to be a movie site locator and say, "Hey, we're scouting for sites. I really need to see if this location will work for our next movie or TV show or whatever."
I got print up some business cards. I could do that.
Yeah.
A stack of old Disney and a stack of old Warner Brothers cards, so maybe that could still work.
Yes.
Yeah, I should
Go
have
for
thought about that. You just had me all elated. I thought I'm going to the subway station after 30 years. Oh well.
Well, with your police background, Bill, you might be able to get a job as a security guard there and let yourself in.
Yeah, how we're here to check for the bomb squad. I actually worked with the bomb squad this week. I should have asked them to see if they could help me. So
just get a German Shepherd and just go right there and they'll let you in.
Oh God, yeah.
Tell them you're snooping for explosives.
It was interesting. This past week, somebody went bonkers at a local mall and was running around. They was going to explode a bomb, and they had to call out the bomb squad. And I had to block traffic to the area. So I was talking to the sergeant after we were doing a debrief, and they were saying how they sent out a robot to look at this guy's backpack, and they carry a little X-ray machine. And it wasn't strong enough to get through the material of the thing. So now they put the guy in a big suit, and he went out carrying an X-ray. And you said, how do they decide which guy to to do it? And I said, I think they were standing behind the truck flipping coins, and this guy lost. So and he went out, and that X-ray didn't work. So they had to send another guy out with a knife, and they were very carefully cut it open, and it just turned out to be a bunch of junk and wires and stuff. But yeah, I'm not volunteering for that detail. I'll block traffic for them, but most of you have probably seen the big ass mistake they made 3 months ago.
Right.
Yeah. So when they said, "Oh, we're going to be bringing out the big truck," and I was tempted to say, "Oh, you got one left," but no. Caroline, you had your hand up?
Yes, I'd just like to recommend a visit to the Biltmore Hotel. But when I was in LA 9 years ago, I actually stayed at the hotel for over a week, and it is really an amazing place. Walking through the lobbies, and just off the main corridor, they've got a little corridor called Heritage Alley, where they've got these giant framed photos of the Academy Award presentations. It was about 10 times that they held the Oscars there in one of the ballrooms. And they have it identifying all the people with little numbers on them, and you can see them. And actually, I got a look in one of those ballrooms after an event was cleaning up, and took a few shots in there, and it turns out that it was actually the place where they dreamed up the Oscar statue, that the original sketch of an Oscar statuette was done on a Biltmore Hotel napkin when they were having drinks there. So it has some real links with Hollywood history.
It's great. I worked when I was an independent consultant for years. I worked with a woman who would find me a lot of engagements, and she liked to do business at the Biltmore. And she would bring clients in there, and we would meet for lunch at the Biltmore to discuss whether or not I could get them out of their IT mess or whatever. And so the Biltmore Hotel knew her really well. And she would be able to say, hey, would you open up the room like you were mentioning? And we just wander through the place. I mean, the woodworking in that building is fantastic. It's just craftsmanship you cannot afford to duplicate today.
Another great one is the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel, which is across from Grauman's Chinese Theater.
Mhm.
So if anybody's ever there and doing that little tour, go in there. The lobby of it is really beautiful.
Yeah, that's another one they redid that had gotten really into the toilet, and then they covered over so many of the original stuff, and then they went in and later redid it, cleaned it up, and ripped down the 1960 ceilings and found the 1930s and that sort of stuff.
It's supposedly haunted by Marilyn Monroe, and there's a room that she stayed in that people always ask for. But it's a cool place.
Yeah, sort of it gave thought to the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror, right?
It did, yeah.
Yeah.
Brock would probably know better than me on that. I think their elevators work though.
Yeah.
But by the way, speaking of the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror, for those of you that did work on it, which I did not, I apologize for the behind the attractions clip of me on it, because they're there. So we're going to do this, and I pop up saying it will never work. I was never asked about the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror. We never discussed the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror. That clip, I have no idea what I was saying would never work, but it popped up there. So my son now likes to walk around and just randomly, when I say something like, I'm going to go out and wash the car, he says, that will never work. Or, I have to fix some and such. That will never work. So they totally took me out of context. I never proclaimed that your Tower of Terror would never work, and I'm glad that it does, or it did.
Well, that's the line that Walt never wanted to hear.
Yes.
In
Yeah.
fact, that was his biggest compliment, according to Dick Sherman, was that'll work.
Yeah.
That's just, yeah, that'll work.
And I just get a kick out of how Hollywood likes to snip things out here and post it over there. So I was watching that show. I was as surprised as anybody else to see myself in that episode, because we never talked about it. That was 30 years after I left Imagineering. I didn't know anything about it. What the hell? Bam. Well, that will never work. Any interesting history behind the El Capitan Theater? I don't know an awful lot about that myself, about the history of it. Carol and I got a really neat tour of it, though, a couple of years ago. They were showing the movie Tomorrowland out there, and they invited me to come there and just, do a meet and greet. And we went out, and they gave us a full tour of the studio, of the theater down below. And then they said, would you like to take a tour through the organ? And I said, through the organ? And yeah, we went through it. I mean, there's little footbridges that walk through the pipes, and you have little pipes this big and pipes as tall as my house. And it's just, oh, don't bang that, don't walk. And we walked all the way through it, and then the dressing rooms and down below where the elevators are and all the rest of it. So it's an amazing theater. If any of you guys, ex-Disney guys, ever had a chance to go through there?
I haven't, I've been in it, and I believe that organ came out of the Fox Theater in San Francisco, but I'm not positive of that. There's been several big organs that have moved around.
Right.
Yeah, I got a small tour, but I didn't get to where the organ was when Disney first refurbished it and did that. That was all part of that system. If you remember back in the 40s and 50s, and I think into the maybe early 60s, movies, when they first came out, big movies would play in Hollywood, at one of the major theaters, like the Chinese Theater, like the Egyptian, like the El Capitan, what was it? 100 Around the World in 80 Days was at the Carthay Circle. And there was one other one in there, I think, that were really big theaters, and they would play exclusively there for a month or two, and then go to a limited release around the city in the next level of theaters, which included where I lived. There was a theater called the Loyola Theater in Westchester, and that was one of those next tier theaters at one time. And then it would go wide. Nowadays, it's all about how much money you make the first weekend. So everything goes wide instantly, and there's no exclusive play of idea. But yeah.
The El Capitan, as you mentioned, was one of the roadshow things. I'd like to just show you real quick one of the most famous shows they ever had at the El Capitan.
Yeah.
I took Carol out for a drive one day, and I said, we're going to go to Griffith Park and visit the old zoo. I've never been there. I want to go see it. We drove over, didn't quite find it. So let's just drive over and see what's going on in Hollywood that day. So she goes, oh, okay. Yeah, I guess we got nothing else to do. We drove down the road, and I had arranged it with the El Capitan to be up there on the marquee for a certain window, and I had to time myself to get there. And I had a friend that was videotaping it out on the street as we drove up. So we're driving along, and I said, oh, wow, you can't even get over to Man's Chinese Theater. It's all chained off. You can't get over there. Oh, but the El Capitan, oh, but they have a show in. And I just wish I had the look on the picture, the look on her face when she saw it. So, yeah, I'd see that show, but her souvenir pin's available. No, but Carol can read you a poem instead. So
I can, sorry, my wife was going. I can tell you, I'm not with Disney or anything, but we took the standard tour at the end of our last Route 66 trip. And no one knows that they have a standard tour. We were the only two people on it. And they spent 2.5 hours showing us around that theater and everything down below. We didn't get to go in with the pipes, but we got to see the organ. We got to see the Sherman Brothers room down there. And they were showing Avengers in the main screen. There were 3 people watching Avengers, so we couldn't go in there. But it really was, if you get a chance to go there, it's a cheap tour. I think it's $5, and almost no one takes it. So you can get a lot of one-on-one time with your guide and go all over the place. It's well worth doing.
great, I'll have to look into that. And you can rent the marquee. They are glad to do that too. So I saw somebody mention online that you could do it. So I figured, what the hell, I can't pass that up. So I like to keep Carol on her toes. Somehow she's put up with many, many years of my pulling stunts like that on her. So she's a real good sport.
Now, Bill, I just checked, and it was the Fox Theater organ that was bought by Disney, it says, and put into the El Cap.
Yeah.
36 rank 4 manual organ, which reminds me that some really good friends of ours had a home over in Toluca Lake that had that same size organ in it.
Wow.
And that was the second. They had 2 huge pipe organs. So
you guys ever gone up to see the one in San Somar at the Nethercut Museum?
yeah, that's another great place to see, and it's free.
Yeah, it's on
The car.
They have a great car collection. Nethercut was basically the guy from Merle Norman Cosmetics, and he would take the profits and start buying cars and more cars. And it's got a fantastic collection of restored cars. He's even got a restored train up there now, and you can go all the way through it, right up to the cars, and look in, and they all run. And we live maybe about 4 miles, 5 miles from there. And we see them drive through our neighborhood. You know, you'll be, sitting out the street on your way to, get a hamburger. All of a sudden, a Stanley steamer will go driving by you, or a Duesenberg. As the curator there says, you haven't lived until you've pulled into a Jack in the Box and a Duesenberg and see the look on their face. But they take them out. They said all the cars run, the keys are in them. And up until the pandemic, they were running about once a month silent movies. And we would try to go to those as often as we could. And they would show them up there in what used to be the Nethercutt's family's private dining room. And they would bring in musicians. Sometimes they would just have the organ concerts. And other times they would do it along with movies. And they'd do a Harold White night or a Phantom of the Opera night around Halloween, and they'd bring people in to play the organ. And all around the room, for those who haven't seen it, it's lined with giant music boxes. I mean, music boxes the size of my office here.
Orchestrions.
Yeah, orchestrions, tremendous mechanical devices, drums and organs and everything, and all free. And it's I don't think they've opened up since the pandemic, but once it does, if you ever come to LA, the Nethercut is just an absolute must-see if you're into antique cars.
I think we would have heard if they had opened because we're on
Yeah.
their mailing list. But they give free tours. The man who does the maintenance on all of the instruments gives a free tour. I guess he's the curator,
Yeah.
2 or 3 days a week through the whole building. And it's really interesting. At the very end, before they closed down, they started charging for the concerts. But I don't know if that was just to see if it would go or what. But they
think
used to
you're-
be free.
They announced they were gonna do it, and then they canceled it because of the pandemic. So hopefully when they come back, it's free again. Because they went from free to something like $30 a person.
I know it was kind of expensive when you think about it compared to what they had done. But anyway,
But it's a fascinating place to go to, and they've invited, different things. When they do a silent movie, sometimes some of the people whose parents were in there come up and talk about it or things like that. And they've had some organists that come in from well across the country, or some of this have come in from overseas, just for the privilege of playing at that particular organ. And it's really a spectacular show. It's really a really nice venue. There are so many things to do in LA, and you just realize after a while, oh, I haven't been out there, I haven't done this, and glad you mentioned so many of them, Glenn. It's places you go to, just, oh, it's been a while since I go back there. I need to go back and see it again.
Well, another one is the Orange Empire Railway Museum out in Paris, California. I'm sure you've been there.
No, I haven't. And a guy I know, James Keyline, is another Disney historian, actually works out there and works on the steam train through, and keeps saying we need to get together. And we keep seeing each other at Disney events, and we just haven't worked out meeting there. I do need to go.
Do it. It's a kind of by Riverside, but they have the original ticket booths from Disneyland out in front.
Mhm.
So that's kind of fun to see. And we had been there on a weekend when they had all the trains running. They've got the old red car. They've got the old street cars that have the big people catcher on the front of them.
Yeah.
And they had a live steam train that they steam up. And now they have Ward Kimball's trains. He donated a huge amount of money to build a big train shed. And they've got Chloe, which was the little train he used to run up and down his driveway.
Mhm.
And Emma Nevada, I think, is there too. But
Yeah,
if you go on the weekend, it's really crowded. But if you go during the week, Sandy and I were coming back from San Diego, and we said, well, let's go to this. And we go, and there was not one car in the place. And I said, well, it says it's open. So we walked in and to the little gift shop, and the guy says, I said, are you open? He says, yeah, but nobody comes during the week. Would you like a tour? So he spent about 2 hours walking around all the buildings, telling us all the history of all the trains and streetcars and everything. So it's huge, and it's very, very interesting if you're into trains.
I am, and my family isn't, so I haven't inflicted that on them. But I just made a mental note. As soon as our heat wave is over, I'm going to follow your advice. I'm going to go over and visit it.
Take some pictures, and then you can do a talk.
Great. But yeah, I mean, again, people mention trains. I could show you all sorts of train rides across England and Wales and, some other things like that. I love them. Carol's very understanding. It's like, okay, where's this train taking us to? And we've actually had some good ones that she said, well, that one was really nice, and others, okay. But I have to go out to Paris. My friend James keeps saying we got to meet there. It's, yeah, we'll do it. 20 years go by and we haven't done it. We're going to have to do that.
Just be careful not to say, hey, Carol, I'm taking you to Paris for your birthday.
Yeah.
You might not survive when she sees where you're going.
Yeah. Well, that was Paris, not Paris, right? So, well, we've been to Paris together, so.
Bill, there's a really nice train museum in Ogden, Utah. And then we've also been to the one in outside of Philadelphia that's just remarkable. Plus, of course, they have the downtown station, which is really historical. But what I wanted to mention to you is that we were in Shanghai airport, and they had I'm guessing around a $300,000 Lamborghini. And there were a set of keys sitting on the hood. And we were like, is that somebody's joke, or are those the real keys to that car?
Well, there's only one way to find out.
I know. But it probably would lead to a, term in jail or something.
It'd be
In a
worth it.
Chinese prison.
Yeah, no, if I was, a kidder, which I am, I would have put, keys to a Yugo or something on it, but, yeah. Well, again, the Nethercut, it's amazing that the cars are all in great shape and they're just phenomenal condition. And we do see them, like I said, go up and down the street, and it's really an eye turner. And some days they'll take them out in a caravan, and you'll be at the light, and all of a sudden, there goes a Model A and a Model T, and there goes a Duesenberg, and there goes a Lamborghini, and it's like, whoa, it's really kind of fun to watch. I would be scared to death that I would take it out and dent it. So they said, I asked the curator once that, and he goes, yeah, they get dented, we fix them. To him, it was no big deal.
When I lived in Burbank, we used to see Jay Leno driving old time cars all around all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he'd wave at everybody, hey, how you doing?
When I worked at Universal, we were asked to do a favor for Jay for some reason. He needed something done out of his garage. So I went out there, and that is mind-boggling to see out there. And it was like, oh yeah, come and meet me for a ride. And he gave me his phone number, which I still have someplace, which I hopefully imagine he's changed by now. But what a super friendly, nice, down-to-earth guy he is.
He really is.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as you wanted to talk about cars, and then I mentioned, I had an airplane, and it turns out he likes to buy airplane engines because there's a whole bunch of really high-powered cars that are powered by airplane engines, and he likes to buy old airplane engines so he has spare parts. So he was saying, how much you want for your plane? But it turns out mine's a rotary engine. He wants inline engine, so he didn't come in, he didn't rip the engine off my plane. Couldn't be a nicer guy. Well, appreciate folks joining. How many people want to see Vintage New York next week?
Sure.
Okay.
May not be here, but I'd like to see it.
Okay. Well, we will probably do that. And again, if there's other areas of people who like to show us vintage podunk, or Carlos, where did you grow up in? Was it Garden City? Yeah. Oh, wow, the things you remember. Amazing. Maybe you can show us vintage Garden City. Carlos, you ever go to the guy's site, Vintage Hempstead? There's a guy on Facebook has a named Pat Mazza, M-A-Z-Z-A. And he has a site on Vintage Hempstead, and he also goes off into the surrounding areas. And he was posting some pictures this week when they tore down the original Garden City Hotel. And just heartbreaking to watch the gazebo coming down and everything else as they were raising it and stuff. So go take a look on Facebook for Vintage Hempstead or the name Pat Mazza, M-A-Z-Z-A, and all sorts of pictures in the area that we grew up. You might get a kick out of it.
There's a great show on KCET that Ralph Story did called Things That Are Not Here Anymore. And it's all about a lot of the stuff you're talking about and showing. And there were two of those, and I think they run them every once in a while. So if anybody gets a chance, those are really worth seeing.
I've got at least one of those on video that I taped when it was on years ago. And it's like the old Yule Hauser shows, they were corny as hell, but I've got one where I don't think it's online. I have to look for Yule Hauser goes out to Disneyland, and that was a real kick to see him. Oh wow, that's the greatest wishing well I've ever seen, because everything Yule Hauser saw was the greatest whatever he'd ever seen. That's the greatest parking lot I've ever been in. Hokey as hell, and I love the shows, and we've been to so many places just because I've seen him going on about it. And so as long as we're here, it's only 40 miles off to the east. Let's go. So, and you get there and take a look at it. He did some tremendous looks at stuff. So, well, I hope everybody has a great holiday weekend. Anybody having a barbecue that we're invited to?
My son-in-law is making ribs, so sorry.
Listen, somebody in Texas could have said, oh yeah, I'll invite you, but we wouldn't have called them on it. But okay, fine, we know where we stand. Thank you. So we are not having barbecue. We are taking it very easy, and I hope the phone doesn't ring for the weekend. So appreciate everybody having the times with us, and we will see you next week, probably for New York, unless something else strikes my fancy. And I hope everybody has a great couple days away from the salt mines. Talk to you all later. Thanks for the input from everybody, and you gave me some things to go see, Glenn.
Oh, okay, good. I'm glad.
All
Thank
right,
you
bye.
again. Bye.
Good job, Bill.